All right, so this is my attempt at the 2024 AP Precalculus FRQ number 1. This is with a graphing calculator. So in part A, it says the function h is defined by the composite function, h of x is equal to the composite function g of f of x. Find the value of h of 3 as a decimal approximation or indicate that it is not defined. Well, by the definition of a composite function, in this case here, h of 3 would equal g of f of 3. So f is my graph. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at f of 3, and I can see that at 3 on the graph I have the output value of 1. So that means that h of 3 is equal to g of 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in 1 in for g's function, and I would get 2.916 times 0.7 raised to the first power. And again, we have a graphing calculator for this, and it would come out to be 2.041 rounded to 3 decimal places. Okay. All right, the second part of A, find all values of x for which f of x is equal to 1, or indicate there are no such values. So when f of x equals 1, see we're passing through this, checking, and we can see that at x equal -3, x equals 0, and x equal +3. We have the value of 1. Okay, so that's part A, and then we'll move on to part B next. Okay, for part B, find all values of x as decimal approximations for which g of x equals 2, or indicate that there are no such values. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to sub in 2 for g of x, and we are going to use our calculator to find the x value. So there's a couple ways to do this. You can graph g of x and graph 2 and see where they intersect each other at what value the x value is. Or you can use the zeros by subtracting 2, setting it equal to 0 and looking at the x-intercept. And if you do that on the calculator, you're going to get x is 1.057. Okay, for part 2 on B, determine the NBA behavior of g as x increases without bound. Express your answer using the mathematical notation of a limit. All right, so when we look at g of x, we can see it's an exponential function. And in this case here, the base lies between 0 and 1. So what's happening is we're going to get exponential decay. So we know that exponential decay is going to decrease, and it's going to decrease, and its limit value is going to be 0 in this case here. So writing this as a limit, we would say the limit as x approaches infinity of g of x is going to equal 0. All right, part C, determine if f has an inverse function. Well, if I look at the graph here, I have 3 values that have the same output on the graph of f. So for it to be a function, if I were to invert this, that means that if we flip the x and the y around, I would have 1, -3, I would have 1, 0, and I would have 1, 3. Well, based on the definition of a function, this is not a function because the value of x equal 1 has 3 different output values. So that means that we would not be able to invert f. So that means f inverse does not exist. And there's other ways to write this. Okay. All right, so that was problem number 1 on the 2024 AP Precalculus exam.